Everything in Australia wants to kill you. Nowhere else would it be normal to have spiders the size of your head sneaking into the house, or to come across snakes chilling on your patio, or to regularly see kangaroos, an animal that could kick the life out of you if it wanted, just roaming around. This reputation has naturally been infused into the cinematic history of the continent. Animals attack in films like Razorback, Long Weekend, and countless shark films like The Reef, and even the most recent release of the aptly named Dangerous Animals, directed by the Loved Ones director Sean Byrne. Australian cinema, however, is not just populated with killer animals, but littered with rowdy, violent killers like the murderous families holding hostages in films like The Loved Ones. In 2005, director McLean released a chilling film inspired by real crimes to tap into both universal and distinctly Australian fears. This sadistic survival thriller is none other than Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek tells the story of three backpackers, Liz, Christy, and Ben, who set out to explore the vast, barren Australian landscape. Their journey takes them to Wolf Creek National Park, home to a giant meteorite crater, which actually happens to be the second largest meteorite crater in the world, so add that to the horror movie location road trip. When their car mysteriously breaks down, they are rescued by a rugged outback local named Mick Taylor, portrayed by John Jarrett, who tows them to his remote camp under the pretense of helping them. Uneasy at first about this stranger, they let their guards down after a night of drinking and joking around with this bloke who just happened to cross their path. Once night falls, the group discovers Mick is not the good Samaritan he seemed, but a sadistic killer with a penchant for torture and psychological torment. McLean has openly admitted that the film was inspired by real crimes, particularly those of Ivan Millet, known as the Backpacker Killer, who murdered at least 7 young tourists during the early 1990s, and Bradley John Murdoch, convicted of the 2001 abduction and murder of British tourist Peter Falconio. Though Wolf Creek is a work of fiction, these inspirations lend the film some unsettling credibility, especially since they were probably still living in the recent memories of the Australian public. The opening title card even proclaims that the events are based on true events, an age-old marketing tactic that effectively instills a fear of the outback into the viewer right from the get-go. At first glance, Wolf Creek adheres to a traditional vacation gone wrong horror movie structure. A group of young people venture into an unfamiliar environment, encounter an evil force, whether human or otherworldly, and are hunted down one by one. The first third of the film functions almost like a road trip drama, allowing time to develop the relationships and potential romance between the characters and presenting a slow, methodical build-up that focuses on the natural beauty and isolation of the outback. The pacing is essential. Like Mick's Aussie charm, it lulls the audience into a false sense of security before the film pivots violently. What makes Wolf Creek particularly unsettling is its refusal to conform to traditional horror tropes like the final girl, disrupting the viewer's ability to predict who might live or die. The character who initially appears to be the protagonist and perfect final girl material, Liz, doesn't make it to the end of the film. The eventual survivor, Ben, is mostly passive and even absent for a good portion of the film, and his escape feels less like a victory and more like a fluke. There is no climactic showdown, no justice served, and the killer walks free. This nihilistic approach to storytelling aligns with McLean's stated desire to create a horror film that reflects the randomness and cruelty of real-world violence, much like other films of this time period like Saw or Hostel. Wolf Creek aims for a rough documentary-like realism. The performances, particularly that of John Jarrett as Mick Taylor, heavily contribute to this feeling. Jarrett's portrayal is charismatic yet horrifying, blending the charm of a stereotypical Aussie bushman with the menace of a calculated predator. He is so distinctly Australian that this caricature eases any defenses the backpackers might have had. He's all the more terrifying because of how grounded he feels. His weapons of choice are simply tools that a bushman might have on him, like a hunting rifle or a knife, which also makes for a brilliant reference to Crocodile Dundee. Mick is not a monster in the traditional sense. He is a man, shaped by cultural attitudes and a deep-seated hatred for outsiders. And he seems like someone you would be happy to share a beer with at a pub. One of the most apparent themes in Wolf Creek, thanks to its distinctly Australian setting, is isolation. Not just physical, but existential. The outback is portrayed as an empty, godless space where societal rules no longer apply. The vastness of the landscape, which might be awe-inspiring in another context, becomes a character in itself, a hostile and different presence that offers no comfort or refuge. Once the characters are stranded, they are completely cut off from civilization. There's no cell reception, no help coming, and no way to escape. The film thus explores how geography, especially familiarity with the geography, can be weaponized, and how the natural world, far from being a benign backdrop, can become a participant in the horror. There's also a hint of xenophobia woven into this. Mick Taylor's character embodies a violent nationalism, laced with contempt for foreigners and city dwellers. Once he takes note of the girls' British accents and makes a homophobic remark about Sydney, where Ben is from, he quickly takes advantage of the fact that these travelers are out of their depth. In his eyes, they have trespassed on this predator's territory and deserve to suffer the consequences. It's mean and gritty, not just in its subject matter, but in its visual choices. The cinematography by Will Gibson captures the vastness of the outback and leaves you in awe of the landscape. The film is shot on a low budget, but this limitation becomes an asset, creating a very grounded viewing experience. The use of natural lighting, long takes, and handheld cameras during the action sequences give the film a pseudo-documentary feel. This is especially evident during the scenes of chase and capture, which are chaotic and disorienting, just like the fear and confusion the characters are feeling. These close-up shots and shaky cam footage are utilized to make the film feel extremely intimate. The sound design escalates this even further, doing away with the dramatic scores in favor of ambient noise, adding to the film's rawness. The contrast between the serene beauty of the Australian landscape and the brutality of the violence committed within it creates a disturbing juxtaposition. McLean frequently frames his shots in a way that emphasizes the overwhelming scale of the outback, reducing the characters to mere specks in an endless void. This strategy reinforces the idea that nature is indifferent to human suffering, an idea that resonates with the existential horror at the film's core. Color is also used strategically. The early scenes are bathed in warm, golden hues, evoking a sense of peace and adventure. As the film progresses, the palette becomes cooler and more desaturated. As night falls upon them, so does the descent into terror. On a first viewing, it might be hard to pin what kind of film it is going to become, and you would never expect who or what is coming. The most memorable aspect of Wolf Creek is the violence, especially in how it is in opposition to Mick's bumbling, friendly facade. Although some critics have accused the film of being exploitative, others argue that it reflects the disturbing reality of gendered violence in both domestic and international context. A back-and-forth debate that happened around countless films from this era that got a slap on the hand from critics and labeled as torture porn. McLean does not glamorize the violence. Rather, he presents it in a cold, matter-of-fact manner that underscores the helplessness of his victims. The scenes of torture, particularly Liz's discovery of Chrissy being assaulted, are harrowing, forcing the viewer to sit in the uncomfortableness. In Australia, the film sparked debates about the ethics of fictionalizing real-life tragedies, especially so soon after the events that inspired it. Critics questioned whether it was appropriate to profit from the suffering of actual victims and their families. Despite the controversy, the film was a commercial success, especially internationally. It grossed over $30 million worldwide on a budget of less than $2 million. This success led to a sequel, and eventually a spin-off TV series. While the sequels veered more into the action horror territory, the original Wolf Creek remains a singular experience, a disturbing, nihilistic, and relentlessly bleak film eager to push boundaries. Wolf Creek is a major staple in the Australian horror scene. It joined other films like The Descent and High Tension in ushering in a wave of post-9/11 horror that emphasized survival, bodily danger, and moral ambiguity. In Australia, it forced audiences to reckon with the darker aspects of national identity, particularly the mythologizing of the outback and the stereotype of the larrikin Aussie bushman. Mick Taylor is now an iconic horror villain, but with a uniquely Australian twist, one that we might see revisit the big screen in the near future. Isolation, gratuitous violence, and cultural fears are all themes that will always get the avid horror fans into theater seats. Wolf Creek's stripped-down realism and unflinching look at human cruelty take it beyond standard slasher fare. By grounding its horror in real-world events and setting it in a landscape as vast and unforgiving as the outback, the film crafts a unique and terrifying experience. Whether seen as a cautionary tale about the dangers of wanderlust or a grim meditation on Australia's cultural psyche, Wolf Creek stands as a film from the early 2000s that still hits hard today.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.